Graduating summa cum laude meant nothing. Mom spent $14,000 on my brother's community college dropout party while I got a $1.25 gift card. Your brother has potential, she told all 36 relatives. I smiled, poured my coffee, and said nothing. 3 years later, my brother called at 9:11 p.m. 47 missed calls on Mom's phone. He said, "She just found out who your employer." The dean called my name, and I watched my mother's face from the stage. She was looking at her phone. 3,200 people in that auditorium, and my mother, front row, aisle seat, the one I'd specifically reserved 3 months in advance, was scrolling through something. My father, who'd been dead for 6 years, would have been on his feet. I knew that the way gravity works. But my mother's thumb was swiping upward, and the gold honor cord around my neck suddenly felt like it weighed about 40 pounds. I walked across that stage at Ridgemont University with a 3.97 gigapascals, a summa cum laude distinction that only 11 other students in a graduating class of 840 earned, and a job offer already signed from a company I'm not going to name yet. The applause was generous. My academic advisor, Dr. Presswell, was clapping from the faculty section with actual tears in her eyes. She'd written me a recommendation letter that was 4 pages long. My mother didn't look up until I was already walking down the stairs on the other side. "Oh, you're done? That was fast," she said when I found her afterward. She was holding a shopping bag from Nordstrom. She'd gone shopping before the ceremony and hadn't had time to put the bag in the car. "Your brother just texted. He wants Thai food for dinner. You like Thai, right?" I did like Thai food. That wasn't the point. My brother Declan was 20 at the time. He'd enrolled at Greenfield Community College the previous fall, lasted 1 semester, dropped 2 of his 4 classes, gotten a D in one and a C- in the other, and then announced in January that academia wasn't for him. He said he was going to become an entrepreneur. When my mother asked what kind, he said the kind that makes money, and went back to playing video games in the basement of her house in Warrendale, Pennsylvania. That was February. By March, my mother had started planning something. I didn't know what it was at first. I'd hear her on the phone with my Aunt Constance, talking about catering. I'd hear her mention a DJ. I assumed it was for someone's birthday, maybe a retirement party for Uncle Gil, something like that. It wasn't. 4 days before my graduation, I drove home from my apartment near campus to pick up a suit I'd left in my old closet. When I walked in, the dining room table was covered in printed invitations, cream cardstock, embossed lettering. There was a proof sheet from a print shop with a photo of Declan on it, one of those professional headshots my mother had paid for, and across the top it said, "Celebrating Declan's next chapter." I picked one up, read it, put it back down. "What's this?" I asked. My mother came in from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Oh, you saw those, aren't they nice? Tamara at the print shop did them. She gave me a bulk discount." "What's the occasion?" "Declan's leaving Greenfield. I want to mark the moment. He's transitioning. It's a big deal." "He dropped out. He's moving on. There's a difference, Weston." I didn't argue. I'd stopped arguing with her about Declan around the time I was 16. That was the year she'd missed my state science fair finals because Declan had a cold and she didn't want to leave him alone. He was 14. He had a runny nose and a bag of cough drops, but she stayed. The party happened 2 weeks after my graduation. She rented the back room at Catalano's, this Italian restaurant in Cranberry Township that charges $11,000 just for the space. She hired a DJ. She had it catered by an outside company because Declan didn't like Italian food. She flew in relatives from Tucson and Sacramento. She invited 36 people. I know the exact number because she had a seating chart printed and laminated, and I counted the names while standing next to the bar. 36 relatives, friends, and neighbors all gathered to celebrate a 20-year-old who had failed out of community college. The party cost $14,000. She told me casually the next morning. $14,000, but worth every penny. Did you see Declan's face? He was glowing. He was drunk, actually. He'd convinced my cousin Rafe to buy him a bottle of Hennessy and been taking swigs in the bathroom all night, but sure, glowing. "That's a lot of money," I said. "It's an investment. Your brother has potential, Weston. He just needs support." She said it like she was reciting a fact. "The sky is blue. Water is wet. Your brother has potential." "I graduated summa cum laude," I said. I didn't say it angrily. I didn't say it bitterly. I said it the way you'd say I had eggs for breakfast. Just a fact placed on the table next to hers. She looked at me like I'd said something mildly confusing. "I know, I was there." "You were on your phone." "I was texting your Aunt Meredith. She wanted to know how the ceremony was going." "You got me a $25 gift card." She paused, set down her coffee mug. To Barnes & Noble. You love books. You spent $14,000 on a party for Declan dropping out of school, and you got me a $25 gift card to a bookstore. Weston, it's not a competition. That was her favorite line. It's not a competition. She'd been saying it since I was 12, and brought home straight A's on the same day Declan brought home a note from his teacher saying he'd bitten another kid during recess. She'd spent 45 minutes on the phone with the other kid's parents, bought Declan ice cream to calm him down, and when I showed her my report card at dinner, she said, "That's nice, honey, but right now we need to focus on your brother. It's not a competition." At the party, Declan's party, she'd stood up and given a toast. 36 people with their glasses raised. She talked about how proud she was. She talked about Declan's courage in knowing when something wasn't right for him. She talked about his future. She used the word potential 4 times. I counted. She said, "My son has more potential than anyone in this room, and I can't wait to see what he does next." My son, singular. I was sitting at table 3, between my Aunt Constance and my cousin Franklin, who was on his 3rd plate of shrimp cocktail. Nobody mentioned my graduation. Nobody mentioned summa cum laude. Nobody mentioned the fact that I'd been offered a position at one of the most selective firms in the northeastern United States before I'd even crossed the stage. I smiled. I poured my coffee, and I said nothing. That was the last real conversation I had with my mother about anything that mattered for a long time. I went back to my apartment. I started my job. I worked. The company I'd been hired by, I'll call it what it was. Haverbrook Sinclair. If you know the name, you know. If you don't, I'll tell you this. They don't recruit. They select. 400 applications that year, 12 interviews, 3 hires. I was one of the 3, and by the end of my first year, I was the only one still there. I didn't tell my mother where I worked. She didn't ask. She knew I had an office job in the city, which is what she told people at family gatherings. Then she'd pivot to Declan. Declan was starting a clothing line. Declan was launching a podcast. Declan was getting into real estate. Declan was doing none of those things. I worked at Haverbrook Sinclair for 3 years. In that time, I was promoted twice. I was given a client portfolio that most people don't touch until they've been there a decade. I was assigned to the Reinhardt account, which if you know anything about institutional consulting, you know is not something they hand to someone under 30. My direct supervisor, a woman named Claudette Voss, told me in my 2nd year review that I was the most capable analyst she'd managed in 22 years. She said it without smiling, which is how you knew she meant it. During those 3 years, I saw my mother maybe 8 times. Holidays, mostly. Each time, the conversation followed the same pattern. She'd ask if I was eating enough. She'd mention something Declan was doing. She'd tell me he had potential, and eventually she'd ask me for money. The requests started small, $200 for business cards, then escalated. $1,500 for a laptop, $4,000 for a lease deposit. I said no every time. Not because I didn't have it, because the money wasn't going to business cards or laptops or deposits. It was going to the same place it always went, nowhere. My mother stopped asking eventually, but she didn't stop resenting. At Thanksgiving during my 2nd year, she seated me at the far end of the table. Declan was at the head, next to her, wearing a blazer he'd bought with her credit card and talking about cryptocurrency. He said the word blockchain 11 times during dinner. My cousin Franklin was keeping count on his napkin. "Your brother is going to change the world," my mother said, passing the cranberry sauce past me to him. "He's got something special." I ate my turkey. I said nothing. The thing about Haverbrook Sinclair is that it's not just a consulting firm, it's a name, and names have weight. When your name is attached to Haverbrook Sinclair, doors don't just open, they get held open by people who know what that name means. I didn't tell anyone in my family where I worked because I didn't need them knowing. I didn't need my mother suddenly deciding my career was worth talking about, but only because of what it could do for Declan. I kept my head down. I worked. I built something. By my 3rd year, I was managing a team of 4. I had a corner office on the 37th floor. I had a parking spot with my name on a brass plate. I had a reputation. And then the thing happened with Declan. I should back up. During those 3 years, Declan had burned through every venture my mother had funded. The clothing line never produced a single garment. The podcast recorded 3 episodes. The real estate thing turned out to be a pyramid scheme that cost my mother $9,000. The cryptocurrency thing ended when he forgot his wallet password. Each failure made my mother double down. She refinanced her house. She cashed in a retirement account my father had set up before he died. She borrowed money from Aunt Constance, who told me about it quietly at a family barbecue. "She's given him over $170,000, Constance said. In 3 years. And he hasn't earned a dime. Then Declan got the idea that he wanted to start a tech company. He'd been watching videos on YouTube about startup culture, the kind made by 22-year-olds in rented Lamborghinis, and decided that his calling was in disruption. He didn't know what he wanted to disrupt. He just liked the word. He needed investors. He needed credibility. He needed a name attached to his pitch deck that would make people take him seriously. He needed my name. Not my name as in Weston Calloway. My name as in the name on my building badge. The name on my business card. The company. I don't know how he found out. I think it was Franklin. Franklin had seen me at a conference earlier that year. He worked in insurance and our paths crossed at an industry event, and he'd probably mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to my mother, who told Declan. However, it happened on a Tuesday night in October at exactly 9:11 p.m. My phone rang. It was Declan. Hey bro, quick question. I was at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from the office. I was still in my work clothes, standing in my kitchen pouring a glass of water. What's up? So listen, I know you work at, the place. What place? Come on, Wes, don't be like that. I know where you work, Mom told me. I set the glass down. What do you need, Declan? I'm putting together this thing, a startup, and I've got a meeting with some investors next week, and I was thinking, not a big deal or anything, but if I could maybe mention that I have connections at your company, or maybe you could introduce me to someone there, or... No, I haven't even finished. No. Dude, come on. It's not like I'm asking you to do anything illegal. I just want to name drop a little, give my pitch some weight. These investors aren't going to take me seriously if... Declan, you can't use my company's name. You can't imply a connection. You can't reference me or anyone I work with. That's not how this works. Why not? You work there. I'm your brother. That's a connection. It's a liability. What you're describing could get me fired. It could get the firm sued. And your pitch deck. Have you even built a product? Silence. Then, not yet, but... Then no. We're done. I hung up. 47 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Not Declan, my mother. I didn't pick up. She called again, and again, and again. 47 missed calls by the time I went to bed. I put my phone on silent and set it on the nightstand face down. The next morning, I had 6 voicemails. I listened to the first one. Weston, this is your mother. You call me back right now. Your brother told me what you said. He's your family. You will help him. This is not optional. Deleted. The second one was longer, angrier, about sacrifice, about hoarding, about everything she'd supposedly done for me. Deleted. The third one was 5 words. Your father would be ashamed of you. That one I saved. Not because it hurt, because I wanted to remember it. I went to work. I sat in my office. I closed the door. I worked until 7, then went home, microwaved leftover pasta, and watched the Phillies lose by 4 runs. My mother called 6 more times that evening. I didn't pick up. This went on for 3 days. The calls, the voicemails, the texts. She recruited Aunt Constance, who called me with a carefully worded just checking in that lasted about 90 seconds before she said, Your mother is very upset, Weston. I told Constance that I loved her and that this wasn't her problem. She said she knew and hung up. On the 4th day, Declan texted me. Mom's been crying all day because of you. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. On the 5th day, I got an email, not from Declan or my mother, from my HR department at Haverbrook Sinclair. The subject line was, External Inquiry, Callaway W. I opened it, read it twice. Then I picked up my phone and called Claudette Voss. I saw it, she said before I could speak. Someone contacted our investor relations line claiming to be your brother. He told them he was launching a venture in partnership with someone at the firm and wanted to schedule a meeting with our managing director. My chest went cold. Not the scared kind of cold, the focused kind. What happened? I asked. He was told that no one by his name had any affiliation with the firm and that any unauthorized use of the company's name would be referred to legal. He hung up. Claudette, I know it wasn't you, Weston. Your record speaks for itself. But legal wants to document it. You'll need to come in tomorrow and give a statement. I'll be there at 8. 7:30. I was there at 7:15. I sat in a conference room on the 41st floor with 2 attorneys from the firm's legal department and gave a full account. I told them everything, about Declan, his request, my refusal, my mother's calls. I showed them the texts and voicemails. The senior attorney, Trent Barwick, looked at me over his glasses. Has your brother ever had access to your work credentials or any proprietary information from this firm? No. Do you have any reason to believe either of them would attempt further contact? My brother doesn't understand the word no, and my mother has never accepted one. Barwick made a note. We'll send a cease and desist to both of them, formal, on firm letterhead. If there's any further contact, it becomes a legal matter. He paused. For the record, Weston, your position here is not in jeopardy. You handled this correctly. The cease and desist letters went out the next day. Haverbrook Sinclair doesn't send gentle letters. They send the kind that arrive by certified mail and are written in language that makes you feel like you're already being deposed. My mother called that evening, not screaming this time, quiet. Weston, I just got a letter from a law firm. It says I can't contact them. It says Declan can't. It says there will be consequences. That's correct. You did this. Declan did this when he called my company pretending to have an affiliation he doesn't have. That's fraud, Mom. Silence. I could hear the clock in her kitchen, the one my father had hung above the stove. Your brother has potential, she said. Like a prayer. Maybe. But he doesn't have permission to use my name, my company's name, or my professional reputation to prop up a startup that doesn't exist. I don't understand you, Weston. I never have. I know. She hung up. 3 weeks passed. Silence from both of them. I went to work. I managed my team. I closed the Reinhardt account early, which earned me a mention in the quarterly partners meeting. Claudette told me I was being considered for senior associate, which at Haverbrook Sinclair meant something specific. It meant they were investing in me for the long term, which they did for about 1 in every 40 people who walk through the door. Then, on a Thursday night in November, my phone rang at 9:11 p.m. again. Declan. I almost didn't answer, but something about the pattern, the same time exactly, made me pick up. West. His voice was different, not the usual salesman pitch. Something underneath it I hadn't heard before. What? Mom found out. Found out what? Who your employer is. She Googled you. Found an article, some industry magazine featured the Reinhardt account and mentioned you by name. I was standing in my kitchen again. Same spot, same glass of water. And? She's been sitting in the living room for 2 hours, staring at the wall. She called Aunt Constance, who told her she already knew. Then she called everyone. Nobody knew the full picture except Franklin, and he figured it wasn't his business. What exactly did she find out? Everything. Your promotion. What people at your level make. Comments calling you one of the best young minds in institutional consulting. She found your LinkedIn. Didn't even know you had one. Found your team page on the company website. I didn't say anything. West, she spent $170,000 on me, refinanced her house, cashed Dad's retirement fund. And the whole time, I was doing my job. You were killing it and you never said a word. Why didn't you tell her? She didn't ask. She didn't ask, Declan. Not once in 3 years did she ask the name of my company, my title, or how I was doing. She told 36 people at your dropout party that you were going to change the world. She never asked me a single question about my life. Silence, the kind that has weight. She's crying, Declan said. She won't stop. I'm sorry to hear that. She wants to call you. She can. Will you pick up? I thought about it. The graduation, the phone, the Nordstrom bag, the $25 gift card, the $14,000, the toast, my son, singular, the voicemails, the $170,000 burned on nothing, the cease and desist letter sitting in my mother's kitchen next to the clock my dead father hung above the stove. I don't know, I said. West, I didn't hide anything, Declan. I just didn't perform it. I didn't need a party. I didn't need a toast. I didn't need 36 people to watch me be celebrated. I needed one person to ask me how my day was, and she never did. Declan didn't say anything for a long time. She found the gift card receipt, he said finally. The Barnes & Noble one, $25. She was holding it and she kept saying $25 over and over. It was a nice card. West. I have to go, Declan. She's going to call you. I know. I hung up. I stood in my kitchen. I drank my water. I put the glass in the sink. I loosened my tie. My phone rang again 12 minutes later. My mother's number. I looked at the screen, watched it ring, watched the name pulse on the glass. I set the phone on the counter, face down. I went to bed. The next morning I had 11 new voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. I got dressed, drove to work, parked in my spot, the one with the brass plate, and sat down at my desk. Claudette knocked on my door at 9. Reinhardt's team wants to extend the contract. 2 more years. They asked for you by name. Tell them yes." She nodded and left. I picked up the phone, scrolled through the call log. Every call was from my mother, not a single one from Declan. He'd already moved on. That was the thing about Declan. He processed things fast. Shallow roots, quick recovery. By tomorrow, he'd be watching YouTube videos about dropshipping or whatever came next. My mother was different. She'd sit with this. She'd replay every conversation, every choice, every party planned, and every question never asked. She'd go through the numbers, the 170,000, the 14,000, the $25. And she'd do the math not in dollars but in attention. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my apartment. I don't know how she got the address, probably Franklin, though he denied it later. She was standing in the hallway when I came home from work. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing the same coat she'd worn to my graduation, the navy one with the brass buttons. "Weston." "Mom, can I come in?" I looked at her. She was holding her purse with both hands, the way she did when she was nervous. Her eyes were red but dry. She'd done her crying already. This wasn't a crying visit. This was something else. "Yeah," I said. "Come in." She walked into my apartment and looked around. It was clean, sparse. A couch, a bookshelf, a desk. Nothing on the walls except a framed photo of my father that I'd taken from her house years ago, one she'd put in a drawer and forgotten about. She saw the photo, stopped walking, stared at it. "I didn't know you had that," she said. "You put it in the junk drawer in 2019. I took it when I moved out." She pressed her lips together, hard, like she was physically holding something back. "Weston, I need to say something to you, and I need you to let me finish." "Okay." I read the article about the Reinhardt deal. I read it 4 times. I went to your company's website. I saw your photo. I saw your title. I saw what they wrote about you. She paused, swallowed. "I didn't know, and I know that's my fault. I know I didn't ask. I know I spent 3 years pouring everything into your brother while you were doing my job, while you were becoming someone, and I missed it." Her voice cracked, but she held it. "I spent $14,000 on a party for a boy who dropped out, and I gave you a $25 gift card. And the worst part isn't the money. The worst part is that you smiled and said nothing, because you already knew I wasn't going to change." I didn't respond. I let the silence sit. "Your father would not have been ashamed of you," she said, quiet, like a correction to something she'd written in permanent ink. "I should never have said that. He would have been exactly where I should have been, right there, watching." I nodded. "What do you want, Mom?" She opened her purse, took out an envelope, set it on the counter. "What's that?" "The receipt from Catalano's, the $14,000 party, and the Barnes & Noble gift card receipt. I've been carrying them both for 2 weeks. "Why?" "Because I need to look at them, every day, so I don't forget what I did." I looked at the envelope, looked at her. "You should go home, Mom." "Weston, I'm not angry, I'm not punishing you, but you should go home." She picked up her purse, walked to the door, stopped. "Will you call me?" I looked at the photo of my father, the one she'd put in a junk drawer, the one I'd carried out of her house like it was evidence. "I'll think about it." She left. I closed the door, stood in my kitchen, same spot, same silence. The envelope sat on the counter. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what the numbers said. I'd known for years. I loosened my tie, poured a glass of water, drank it standing up. Then I washed the glass, set it upside down on the rack, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed.